there can only be room for one winner. Success means first place on the podium, and second or third are simply consolation prizes for the best of the losers. This zero-sum notion that in order for someone to win, someone else must lose is a cultural cornerstone of Western society. It is hammered home in school sports lessons, in contests such as spelling bees, debating societies, and even in performance tier groups in school. But what's worse is that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Losers get chosen last and sent to the bottom where they get no special attention, whereas winners get more and more support, and before long they're miles ahead of the pack, and there's no way for anyone to catch up. But what if it didn't have to be this way? This is Conversations on Living, a podcast about how to be well, do well, and live well. I'm Chris Brock, and I usually got chosen last when they picked teams in school. And that's why I started this podcast, in an effort to help others like me to choose ourselves and come out winning. Motivational speaker Jim Rohn famously stated that you are the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. And with this podcast, I've been surrounding myself with amazing, inspiring, wise and wonderful people who all have a take on how to live life, make it work, and turn struggles into successes. Today I'm speaking with E.A. Csolkovits, who wants to turn the idea of winning on its head by literally gamifying success. If we were to surround ourselves with people who each committed to raising the others up, like a mastermind group of individuals competing to see who could bring the most success to the others, then surely there could be no losers. This brilliant idea echoes the convener model we explored in episode 68 when I spoke to the fantastic Lindsay Hadley, who described how it's possible to work together for shared success and in doing so create a tide that raises all ships together. Whereas Lindsay Hadley worked with organisations to make it happen, E.A. Csolkovits wants to work with individuals through his free Givers University project. It offers step-by-step instructions on how to create your mastermind group, which he calls a junto, which is a historical word meaning a group of people joined together for a common purpose, and how to bring everyone together in order to help each other succeed. I think it's a wonderful and powerful idea, and it's delivered by a man who's enjoyed its benefits firsthand. EA is a great storyteller with a great story to tell. He's founded many businesses, made many fortunes, flies airplanes, has hosted radio talk shows, and much, much more. You can find out more about his Givers University at www.giversuniversity.com. But before we get started, just a quick shout out to the guys at Headliner. Headliner is the service that I use to create audiograms, which are little audio clips backed up by little video waveforms or captions, subtitles, that kind of thing, which I then post to social media, to Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And you've probably seen the kind of thing. If you listen to podcasts regularly, follow any on social media, you've probably seen what I'm talking about. Headliner is by far the most powerful and easiest way to create them. So if you host a podcast, definitely give it a try. It's at www.headliner.app. And also just a quick word about Plane. This is a video game where you're challenged to grow a beautiful island using mindfulness. Through the game, you can experience deep relaxation and learn straightforward meditations that can help you to care for your mental well-being and to be more present. I've not seen anything like it before, and if you want to give meditation a go but don't know where to start, and you also enjoy video games, then this might just be what you're looking for. So check it out at www.plane.co. That's PLAYNE.co. And finally, a request from me to rate, review and subscribe to this podcast, and also to tell the world. Tell your mothers, fathers, brothers and sisters, your colleagues and co-workers, cats and dogs, goldfish, because it all helps to spread the love, and it helps us to attract better guests and keep the momentum going, and help everyone live well, be well and do well. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts, and also at conversationsonliving.com, where you can also find more episodes and find out more about me, my writing and my meditations and other projects. And while you're there, don't forget to take the 21-day gratitude challenge or sign up for my incredibly infrequent newsletter, and in return you'll get a lovely free treat as a thanks for your effort. And don't forget, you can also continue the conversation in our Facebook group. Just search for Conversations on Living. And now, without any further ado, here is my conversation with E.A. Csolkovits about how we can all give in order to succeed. So E.A. Csolkovits, thank you for giving up your time to come on the podcast. It is quite an amazing story that you've got. And yeah, I mean, quite, it feels like it's just a series of successes. You started off in sales in janitorial supplies, I guess, and then you moved into the diamond business, and it was nutrition and wellness. You've hosted radio talk shows, mentoring programs for presidents and CEOs. You were a millionaire at the age of 23. It's really quite a great story. But behind all of this, there's this notion of givers and takers. This whole idea about of giving, I guess. But I want you to kind of talk me through that. So maybe you could give us a bit of an introduction to your story and where this has all come from.
Well, thank you, Chris. I appreciate that, and thank you for all the kind words. But as I was listening to you say a little bit about some of my background, I was forcibly struck by all of that together is still not as long as my last name. So I have to get to business. I have to get to work. Yeah. So it's time for me to get serious now. I've been working part-time. So, but thank you so much for having me on your show. And I hope we can share some things that were taught to me by people a whole lot smarter than me that I can share with your listeners that'll be able to help them have the prosperous and delightful and happy life that we certainly would love to have them have. So thank you for allowing me to be able to share some of those things with you.
Oh, no, it's a pleasure. I'm just glad you can spare the time. So I'm very grateful.
You're certainly welcome. I have to say, going all the way back, my upbringing was very average. My father was a milkman. He had a one-man operation delivering milk for a dairy called Twin Oaks Dairy out of the Chicagoland area, and got up at 3 a.m. and back then milk came in glass containers, and there was a box outside everyone's house, and that was the milkman's box. And the amazing thing, Chris, is there was always money in the box, and no one ever touched it. Everyone always knew that was milkman money. So a little bit different than today, right? So but different times, right? So, 5 years old, I would get up, and I think, Chris, that was maybe the first time where I really, my father said the same thing to me all the time. And it sort of stuck in a little bit of a strange way, I guess. Because I would watch him, he'd get up at 3 a.m, and he was all by himself. He worked by himself, one-man operation, delivering milk. He'd go pick up the milk in these big sheets of 6-foot ice. And back then, the trucks weren't refrigerated. Only the big 18-wheelers were, right? So the little ones, you had to cut up ice and put them in there, right? So, and I watched him do all this. And at 5 years old, I'd help him. And he always said the same thing. He's, well, when we're done, we're done. And what he was saying was, let's get on with it. Let's get through with the things we need to do so that we can go on and do the things that we can enjoy doing, right? And I think there was sort of a self-starter thing that sort of, because I watched him do it every day. He didn't have someone over his shoulder saying, punch in, punch out, that kind of thing. He had to go in. It was his route, and make something of it. So, and I think that was, I have great fond memories of it, that's for sure. And I know because of all the glass bottles I inadvertently broke, that's why they went to plastic. I'm sure of it, in cardboard, because that was specifically me. So anyway, at the ripe old age of 16, Chris, then I went out and took my first big step in being successful. And that was I became a janitor, and also sold janitorial services to businessmen. Now that was an interesting thing, because at 16 years old, here I am talking to a businessman. He's already had 20 other companies. He knows they all they hire the cheapest help they can get, and here I am talking to a business owner, and I'm 16 years old. So quite a learning curve. But there was 2 amazing, really blessed things that happened to me while I was a janitor. The first was, at 16, I was able to be bonded and basically insured, so that if my buffer, when I was cleaning a place, if it hit a piece of equipment or something, the insurance company would pay for it, right? It also allowed me to be in expensive places. It allowed me to be in expensive homes. And every Wednesday, I cleaned the home of a lady whose name won't mean anything until I make the movie reference for your listeners. There was a movie a couple years ago. It's still out now on streaming and probably will be for a number of years because it's actually a pretty good view. It's called The Founder. Michael Keaton plays Ray Kroc, and it's basically about McDonald's, right?
Yeah, fantastic.
Did you have a chance to catch it?
I've not seen it. I've seen the trailer for it. And,
okay, yeah.
People I know who've seen it, they rave about it. They say it's a great movie.
And I can tell you that I lived there. I live in Oak Brook, where for the first 30 years of my life, which is where the world headquarters was for McDonald's. So I witnessed this whole phenomenon in my life. And I can tell you for sure, at the beginning of the movie, Chris, it says based on a true story. that's true, but it's not the true story. So I mean, it's Hollywood spin all over the place. Ray wasn't that way. They throw in a lot of drama, to get you to watch it. But the events certainly, the events are mentioned, and the events did happen. They're just portrayed Hollywood wise, right? And Ray wasn't the way he's shown in the movie. But anyway, through the entire movie, he's talking to this lady outside his office all the time. He says, June this, June this, June this, June this. June Martino is her name. That lady is the lady whose house I cleaned every Wednesday. Huh. And she had, when I met her, the third most controlling stock in McDonald's. She was very, very wealthy. She was actually, interestingly enough, years later, Chris, she was actually the very first woman to be able to trade on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. She was an amazing lady. And I was able to one day, she sort of put her arm around me, and I asked her, and she told me the whole McDonald's story. And I mean, from beginning all the way up to that moment. And basically I got the feel, and she shared with me the importance that Ray had in her life, that Ray had become like a mentor to her. And ever since then, I thought, well, first of all, man, I got to find a Ray Kroc. This didn't work out too bad for her. I'm cleaning this $1 million home, and it was $1 million home back then, So, and I'm 65 now. So when I was 16, that was a long time ago, right? How could it be 50? How could it be 5 decades already, Chris?
It goes pretty quick, doesn't it?
I turned around 3 times and I'm staring at my father in the mirror. Anyway, so how'd I do that? That happened, right? So she shared with me the importance of a mentor, which was Ray, right? And I thought, man, I got to find a Ray Kroc. And it wasn't 2 or 3 months later, I met my business mentor. With the janitorial service, we sold carpeting. He needed some carpeting. I went to talk with him and give him a bid. Carpeting was a no-go because we had the wrong kind. He wanted something real plush because he was opening a diamond store. And he offered me a job. And I didn't know at that time, and I accepted the job. Later on, he became genuinely the father I never had, even though I had a father. I became the son he never had, even though he had a son. He really genuinely became my mentor. But he was a puritanical genius, not the, I don't know, I guess I call him the IQ kind of genius that I really don't believe in, because I've met in my lifetime too many educated idiots. They all this knowledge they spew at you, but zero execution and implementation skills. Zero, none. They just know the book knowledge. Which means nothing unless you know how to apply it, right? Well, this guy, this Sam Robbins, my mentor, was the other extreme. He was puritanically the kind of person that he could ask you a half a dozen questions, look in your eyes, and have you totally pegged. He knew like your whole life story, just with that. Just to show you what an amazing man he was. He in the United States, because you're in the UK, right? Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
So, and we had this thing called the Great Depression, right? And many decades ago. And he grew up in that era. And he told me things were so bad that for some of his meals, he actually ate cardboard.
Yeah, that's a tough life lesson right there, isn't it?
It really, really is. And of course, he told me people were jumping off buildings because they'd lost their fortunes, committing suicide. And he said multi-mile long soup kitchen lines. No one had any money. And every day, and he was in his late teens, and every day he'd walk by the store, and the store was filled with sewing machines. And there was no one anywhere. No one was in any stores because no one had any money, right? And so one day he just had this flash of an idea, and he went in, and he talked with the man he saw that was standing there every day, and and he said, I noticed there's not many customers here. He goes, yeah, there's none. And he said, no one's got any money, and the last thing they're going to buy is a sewing machine. They need food, right? And he said, I don't even have money for employees. It's just him, right? Standing in his whole store and a bunch of sewing machines collecting dust. So my business mentor said, would you mind if I help you sell some of these? And the man said, you better believe it. They're just collecting dust. What do you have in mind? He said, well, I'd like to propose that we sell them on payments, and we'll split the payments. He said, I'll guarantee the sewing machine. If someone doesn't make good on the payments, I'll guarantee the cost of the sewing machine, so you won't be at risk. And he said, and we could do this together, and we'll split it. And the owner said, you better believe it, man. Go for it. So then the next step was my business mentor put together some flyers and passed them out and put them all up, posted them everywhere for women to work from home, because all families needed money, right? So then he said he was inundated. He couldn't even respond to all of the people who wanted more information because everyone needed money. If you had a job, tell me what it is. So he actually then sold them a sewing machine on payments, set them up each in their own little sewing machine business, if you will, in their home, provided for them the patterns, the material, and then he also guaranteed he would buy the clothing from them that they made, then virtually guaranteeing their income, right? And that they could make the payments on the sewing machine. And then he would take those same clothes and sell them to stores as homemade, high quality, discounted cost clothing, who would then sell them to customers. So in a year where people are jumping off of buildings because they've lost their fortunes, multi-mile long soup kitchen lines, he earned $1 million.
That's incredible. Yeah. I mean, where did that come from? Where did that kind of insight come from?
I tell you the story because I wanted to share with you how extraordinary this man was. I mean, just and what was interesting is he taught me. I ended up calling that the Sam sewing machine story because there's so many parts of that story that are so wild. First of all, here's the thing: he literally earned $1 million and never put any of his own money in. It was none of his own money. He solved problems for multiple people. He solved problems for the sewing machine guy because he had sewing machines collecting dust. He solved problems for people who needed money for income. He solved their income, and then they were able to pay for the sewing machines. He solved an income for the clothing stores to have high grade, handmade clothing that they could sell at a discount. And so what he did really was he went through this chain of events and solved a problem for every one of them. And he shared with me one of the most extraordinary and important parts was what he taught me with all this was that this community of women that he formed, of these women working from home. And that was sort of the beginning of my thoughts of what, a community even was. What is a community, right? And the difference between givers and takers. And he began to teach me the differences that, and as we do, and we teach in Givers University, which manifested because of what he taught me, that we don't label people. We love everybody. And we tell everyone, we love everybody. We say that emphatically. And when we say giver, we're not labeling the person as a giver. We're labeling giver deeds. We teach people how to separate the person who we love from their deeds, which we may not love. And so when we say taker, we're not identifying or labeling a person because we don't label people. We're labeling the deeds. The deeds they have are taker deeds, right? So there's quite a distinction there. And we teach people something that's not being taught: how to discern in relationships. As you well know, Chris, we have businesses opening and closing faster than ever before in history. We have products being antiquated overnight by new products that someone put together in the garage or their basement overnight, right? It's happening faster and faster and faster. So what do we have left? When all this is done, what do we have left? Our relationships. And no one, I've done 120 interviews now since last April, right? Not one single entity have I found is teaching us how to discern in our relationships. In other words, what are the things we should watch? And we began to develop then very granular checklists, right? Not the broad, innocuous swaths where you say, oh, that sounds really good, but how do I apply that? We've broken it all the way down to where you can no longer say, how do you do it? Because there it is. That's what you do. And we have actually developed checklists to help people discern in their relationships. And we have one that's called the 25 Do's, and it's actually 25 deeds that you observe people doing. And from these deeds that you're watching them do, not listening to their words, because as we say in Givers University, your walk talks and your talk talks, but your walk talks louder than your talk talks. The things we do, our deeds will always tell the truth of what we really are all about. So we teach people, observe these deeds, look for these deeds. And when you see them doing certain things, you may want to pull them in closer into your giver community, closer into your life. Or when you see them doing other certain deeds, you may want to begin respectfully, not nasty or rude, respectfully distancing yourself Because if you bring them in closer, they're going to make you collateral damage. And you're going to be stomping out fires not of your making. Your stress level goes up. In fact, I ask your listeners, if you think about all the fires you stomp out every day, if you think about when your stress level goes up, every one of those have one thing in common. There's a name attached to them.
Yeah.
And if we can teach people, which is what we do, how to discern in your relationships up front, and it's a skill, and it's just not being taught anywhere, right? What do you look for? What do you decide? It's like one guy said a number of interviews back, he said, oh, this is really good. I read some book. It said I have to have 5 really good people around me. And I said, you're right. One question. Which 5?
Yep.
Like stared back at me. And I said, no one's teaching us which 5.
So are we talking about this in terms of business communities? Are we talking about it within our kind of social groups as well? What is the aim of the game here in terms of, deciphering whether someone is a giver or a taker in these kind of in these kind of terms?
You actually hit 2 of the 3. You could even add in family, because everything that we teach is it's done in a way that it's immediately applicable to a business environment, to a social environment, and a family environment. And of course, part of that, when we discern others, there's an automatic self-assessment part that's built into all of it. So when someone sees something, oh boy, I can see on this list of 25, ooh, I got to work on number 12, or number 14's a little, I'm being a little takerish right there, And so it's a part of what we teach. And so that brings us all the way to sort of the thing that will impact our lives, Chris, more than a business, more than anything else, a direct result of our family and our social. What are those? Relationships. A community that we form around us. A community of friends. Our community, those family members we're closer to. The community of those. And so what we do is, and I want to share with your listeners, to sort of talk about community for a minute, to maybe provoke some thought. There's a lot of great communities today. People love dogs and help dogs. There's people that help children. Many great organizations, many great communities doing great things. But also, there's been a little bit of, over the most recent years, a change in the definition of what community is. And may I demonstrate how that happens? There's a word that's spelled D-I-E-T. The word's diet, right? Many years ago, if I went to a meeting with 2 or 3 or 4 people, I went to a diet. The meeting was called a diet, right? And then later on, spelled the exact same way, if I received a weekly allowance or a stipend, that was called a diet. I received a weekly diet, right? Spelled the same way, right? Then later on, as I was growing up, the word diet meant eating habits, the way you ate. That was your daily diet, the way you ate, right? Now, if you say the word diet, it means weight loss, right? So spelled the same way, totally different meanings through the years, right? And I submit to you, Chris, and to your listeners, that we've seen the same thing happen with the word community, because today there are a number of what I would call so-called communities, AKA, I would identify them as taker communities. I would ask your listeners to think about this for a minute. Have you been cajoled or asked or invited to join a community, be a part of us, and then within hours later they start selling you something?
Yep. Yeah. I see what you mean.
Those aren't a community. That's a customer list. So why are you doing a bait and switch on me, right? I mean, I've had the same thing, and I go unsubscribe, unjoin, because, and then I feel like I've been had a little bit, because this isn't a community of people working together. I'm your customer hit list. Call it what it is, and then I'll decide, I want to be on your customer list because you have some great products or services. But don't bait and switch me by saying I'm going to join this great community and all I am is a customer to you, right? Big difference. So we're out to identify that difference for many people. So I use the example, in the Old West, they had the covered wagons that would get in a circle for protection.
Yeah.
Well, with the taker communities, they get in a circle and then they start shooting inward.
Yeah.
Shooting in the wrong direction. So, because a taker community is formed to make money off of you. That's a taker community identifier. The whole purpose is to make money. You're a paycheck and that's it. Now we're going to contrast that for your listeners a little bit so they can see the difference, because there's nothing that's going to have a more dramatic impact on your listeners' lives, Chris, than the people they have around them, because those people around them will even influence the way they think, the things they say. I remember when we were kids, in the States, we had a thing like if you said something the same time someone else did, we used to say, yo, me a Coke, because it was sort of like, we both said the same thing at the same time. Probably also because we hung out a lot together, right? It influenced me or us, right? So now we're going to talk a little bit about a couple things, setting the stage for what a giver community is, how those are formed, and then also the steps some would go through. I want to share that with your listeners. These are the steps you go through in forming the proper kind of community around you, step by step, so that they really get some value out of our podcast and your great show, Chris. So the first thing is, one of the things my mentor taught me was what he called the giver scale of life. He said, and I was a teenager at this point, late teens, and he said, let me teach you about life. And I said, okay. And here's a guy, millionaire, multi-millionaire, wealth, oozing from his skin, literally, and very successful. Unfortunately, his health was deteriorating because of, living on cardboard as a kid. He got an extreme case of diabetes. But he said, let me tell you about this life thing and how this works. He says, and how to make it work. He said, picture a scale, and on the right side, all the things you're going to get in your life. Let's call that the receiving part. On the left side of the scale, let's call that the giving part. Everything you're going to contribute, give, everything you can give. He said, here's an amazing thing about this scale. It's never out of balance. He said, it strives for balance, and even at a moment when it seems out of balance, it always ultimately balances itself. He said, so let me share with you how this life thing works. Forget about the right side. He said, in the beginning, it's going to be a little difficult to do that. Forget about what you're going to get. And he said, do your best to heave as much as you can on that left side, and make it your goal to try to get that scale out of balance, because there's so much on the left side it goes down.
So this is fascinating, actually, because I've heard this a lot in terms of, there's a lot of kind of new agey stuff out there about the energy you put into life. And it's something I kind of say as well. The energy you put into life gets reflected back at you. So if you are a taker, perhaps, then you don't in the end, you don't get as much, because you're in that kind of imbalance side of things. But that kind of giving, how do you give? And you've worked in nutrition, so I guess what you're doing is you're helping other people be well, and that is the kind of giving, I guess. And so the rewards you get for that are kind of in balance of that. But how do you give without sacrificing yourself and depleting yourself? And how do you push as much onto that side of the scales without sacrificing too much and kind of becoming kind of depleted and exhausted by the whole process, if you like?
Great question. And first of all, I want to say I'm about as far from a new agey as you could possibly imagine. I'm like the polar opposite of that. Because everything I've been taught in my life from people way smarter than me were very results thing. They were things, when you do this, you get this. I've been taught very cause and effect. And the giver scale of life is very causal and effect. And I found that it worked. I started applying these things that my mentor was teaching me. And one of the things he taught me to answer your question was, he said, let's talk a little bit about giving. He said, when you're a giver, people will take advantage of you. Expect it. He said, but here's the part no one gets. They never know about the rest of that sentence. The full sentence is, when you're a giver, people will periodically take advantage of you. Expect it. But you're never diminished because they did. They are diminished. He said, that's the part. That's the part, once you get your head around that they're diminished. And he said, it will. He said, this scale of life, for whatever reason, it's there, and that's the way it works. He said, yes, that person may take advantage of you, but they lose. What they really ended up doing was diminishing themselves. They lost the relationship. They lost anything you could have contributed. And here's the thing, it will come back to you from another business, from another person, from another event. And I can share with you that there's nothing mystical about that. It's a cause and effect, right? And there's so many dynamics in nature that are cause and effect, right? So the giver scale of life is actually extremely results oriented. And I can share with you an even more dramatic part of it. My business mentor came to me one day, and he said, "Yeah, I'd like to have us compete." And at this point, we were equal partners, right? And I said, "All right, this should be really interesting," And he had that glimmer in his eye, And there was a show in the States way back, I think '70s, called The Monkees. And one of the characters was Davy Jones, and whenever he saw a real pretty girl, his eyes would twinkle. Well, my business mentor could do that with his eyes. I'm not kidding. He had that twinkle. Whenever he had an interesting idea, his eyes would twinkle, and I would think to myself, "This is going to be really interesting. What is about ready to happen?" There's the twinkle, I know, right? So he said, "I'd like to have us compete." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "This is what I propose. I propose a contest that we compete to see who can make each other the most money in a year. And the loser has to buy the winner anything they ask for." I said, "What? Wait, what are you? Wait. All right, if I'm going to commit to this, I want to find out, make sure I understand. All right, so what you're saying, Sam, is you and I are going to compete to see who can make the other one more money in 1 year. So if I make you more money than you make me, I won, you lost. As a winner, I get to ask you for anything I want, and you, as the loser, have to buy it." He said, "That's right." And I said, "Okay, so the other side of the coin must be true, that if you win, or if you lose and I win, I get to ask you for anything, and you have to buy it." And he said, "That's right." I said, "Okay, this should be really interesting. Okay, you're on." So we did it. The first year, Chris, he beat me so bad. It wasn't even funny. And as a result, I paid cash for a home for him in Florida.
Wow.
But I couldn't be mad because I had the money, and he had made me more money that year than I made him. So there was nothing to be concerned about. And then I thought, man, I got to catch on to this. This is going to be brutal if I don't figure this one out, right? And then the next year I won, and he bought me an aircraft, and then I became a commercial pilot. The next year he bought me a limousine. The next year he bought me a second plane. And then after that, we just started carrying it forward. And then I realized what he had done. He knew his health was deteriorating fast. We both did. And here I am in my 30s. So there was no way he was going to be able to keep up with me. We owned everything 50-50. He was not going to be able to put in the time and the effort I was going to be able to put in. He did this on purpose so my head wouldn't get screwed up. He wanted me to win, knowing I would later on, and that I got that extra perk every year that he didn't get, which would help my mind not get goofed up. So this is what I ask you. What kind of person thinks of that?
Well, that's a giver, right? That's a real giver.
I mean, I've never had anyone I've ever explained that context who said they've ever heard anything like it before. And you think, what kind of man would think of that in advance, knowing how I was going to feel, what the future is going to be, but also to demonstrate for me over and over again the principles and precepts he was teaching me.
So can you break this down into an example of how this works? So you give and you give and you give, and ultimately the scale balances itself. So in terms of your practical experience in life, in the diamond business, for example, how did that work? How did that kind of in turn come to balance itself for you?
I'll even tell you a story I very rarely tell, because we're, I should warn your listeners, I never say anything in 10 minutes if I can say it in 20. But anyway, this is a story that dramatically impacts exactly how that works. And it's these kinds of things that made me a believer in that, right? Because it wasn't hocus pocus, but it's as things go on, we realize that's happening and that's working and that's working. While I was being mentored, I also started a training company, separate. And I had a gentleman who was a partner of mine. And back then, the phones had answering machines, right? It wasn't voicemail or anything. And there was this machine that sat on my desk, and it had 2 cassette tapes in it. One was your outgoing message, one was your incoming message. And the incoming message was like 60 minutes long. So this training company was very prosperous. We had a number of offices around the Midwest, and the company was actually doing amazing. I left home for an hour, came back, and the whole incoming message tape was used. And I thought, oh, some kids must have got a hold of it, because it was voice actuated. As long as someone talks, it would record. And I thought some kids got a hold of it, and they did periodically and sort of played with it and just played around with it. Well, that wasn't the case at all. While I was gone, right after I left, my business partner in that business, while I was being mentored separately with Sam Robbins, that he called me and left me a message. And I could hear in the background, back then you could with the phones, when someone was calling you, you'd hear a little tone in the background that would let you know someone's calling them, right? It was like beep, beep, like in the background. I could hear that in the recording, that he was getting a phone call. So he just left me a message, call him back, hit the receiver on his phone so fast and said hello right away that he put my machine on recording and conference call and recorded the whole conversation he had with someone else while I was gone. I wasn't even there. Now, this is where it really gets incredible. The whole conversation was how the two of them were going to systemically take over the company and kick me out of it.
Wow.
And I owned half of it. So let me tell you, Chris, it's a little bit different when you hear it in their own words. It's not third party. I'm hearing him say these things, right? And man, I got to tell you, I had a sleepless night because I'm thinking, man, I never saw that coming. These are some of the things that taught me that I need to learn in all ways to discern in all my relationships. I'm being betrayed here, right? From someone, I had zero indication this was happening. I thought, man, this clearly now I know what kind of person he is. Not only that, I know his plan. I know the plan, right? And I thought, man, what are the odds of this, right? I mean, he could have called at another time. I could have picked up the phone. No, he called when I left. Another person could have called him or not called him. No, that guy called him. When they called and talked, they could have talked about golf or something. No, it's the plan. So you can't tell me that's a coincidence or a mistake. There's just no way. There's no odds that could justify that, right? That was supposed to happen just that way, right? And so I thought, hey, what am I going to do? So I thought, okay, I got to reach down deep into my training. I have to reach down deep into what would Sam do? What did he teach me? And he said, well, every adversity carries with the seed of an equal or greater benefit. It's up to us as leaders to move aside those leaves and find those greater benefits. They're always there. And so I had a sleepless night, and I thought, well, there's only one thing I can come up with. I got to tell Jim that I want him to buy me out. I need to have him buy me out now because I don't want to even be partnered with this guy. So anyway, it shocked him when I told him that. It was going to ruin his plans of his plan he had put together. Then I said, we've got 1 week to put together a buy-sell agreement because I'm going to do something with my mentor, which I was going to be doing another thing with him anyway. So, I got a couple payments from the guy, and I figured they were gifts. I didn't even expect to get anything other than a down payment. But here's what's interesting. A year later, I saw him at an amusement park from a distance. Now, I knew who it was. He was my business partner, right? So there was no question. I knew who I was looking at, right? He was that close. So at least I could see him. He didn't see me because of the angle we were at, but I knew it was him. He looked like he had aged at least 20 years, and it was only 1 year later. And also, I had already, previous to seeing him, had heard that he had filed for personal bankruptcy, closed all of the offices, and gotten divorced. Interesting, in that same year was the largest income year I'd had in my life up to that time. Now, what's interesting about all of that, Chris, he never knows the recording ever happened. I never told him. So there's the classic proof story of how, rather than getting down in the mud and doing all this stuff, I said, hey, I don't want this guy, what do you do with spilt milk? You clean it up and get another gallon. You don't sit there and cry over it and say, wham, wham, wham. You get another gallon, you go on, right? So all the things that happened to me that are benefits of that life came out of this betrayal, and amazing things happened to me in my life because I did what my mentor taught me, which was rise above it. And because I gave to that circumstance, and I gave to myself, which is okay, that separated me from what normally would have been the circumstance, and I rose above it and benefited where he tubed everything, including his own personal life in every way you could think of.
This sounds very stoic. I mean, I've heard other very successful businessmen, whenever something has gone wrong, something's fallen through, something's not quite gone to plan, their response has always been good, and they move on. They learn what they need to learn. They explore any opportunities for turning it around, but they move on. And they use it as a kind of source of growth rather than getting kind of frustrated or upset. They see everything as a kind of opportunity, if you like. Is that what it means? You give that
precisely.
Yeah. So you're giving everything that comes to you in life.
And I can share with you that you said something really pointed there. And forgive me, I didn't mean to interrupt you in your sentence.
No, that's
I apologize. I was fortunate enough when I had my radio talk show, I interviewed 1,000 millionaires in 2 years. Every one of them, Chris, every one of them had the story you just said. Not some of them, not part of them, not half of them, not 90%. Every one of them told me the story where everything looked like it wasn't going to work. Their family said throw in the towel. Their neighbors said throw in the towel. The business said throw in the towel. The finances said throw in the towel. Every kind of reason you could think of. And what's even more amazing is that some of them, these people didn't even know each other. Separate industries, even separate time periods when I was interviewing them. But some of them even used the same words. It was sort of astonishing to me as I was seeking out the commonalities and threads through these 1,000 millionaires. Why them? And most people don't earn $1 million in their whole lifetime if you add all their income together. So why these? What did these men and women do that was so different? And I was wanting to seek and find out, what was that answer? And it turns out there was multiple answers, but this was one of them. They said the following: when things were so dark, they said, I took the next step out of curiosity to see if there was anything else that could go wrong. Did I miss something? They said it was like a morbid curiosity, is there possibly anything else that could go wrong? I'm just going to see if there is, because there's like nothing here. And they said when they did that, they said it was weird that on its own, things started to come together. And it was almost like temporary defeat exited and said, this man or woman, they don't know when to give up. It's going to be easier for me to screw up someone else's life. These ones aren't giving up, so I'm throwing in the towel, and it leaves. And they said, and even in spite of myself, they even used those words. Things started working out, and I was sort of amazed that it was happening. They all had that story, and I found that extremely interesting. That they all had that time where they persevered past normality, if you will, right? And they all had that giver's mindset, that they were willing to contribute, they were willing to give, and they were not focused on what they were going to get out of it. Their persistence didn't take that extra step because of what they were going to get out of it, because some of them said they took the extra step just to see if there was anything else that could go wrong. And that isn't what someone normally wants to get out of something, right? It was quite astonishing.
I mean, is this about taking ownership? Is it about, life is happening to us all the time, but in these moments we step into it and just sort of say, well, hang on a minute, let's see what's going to happen here. I'm going to take a piece of action. I'm going to take ownership of the situation. I have this, something is about to happen, or something has just happened, and it's kind of happened to me. Things have gone wrong. Things have, I've heard this terrible conversation on the answerphone machine, and things are happening that are kind of out of my control. So I'm going to do something now that is in my control, and let's see what happens. Is that what it is? It's about giving yourself.
It's a huge part of it.
Yeah.
Because it's the accepting responsibility for our own thought process, to be what I call an independent thinker, someone who has the ability to think their own thoughts and keep their own counsel no matter what anyone else is saying around them. And as opposed to a dependent thinker who will change their thoughts quickly and easily based on what everyone else is saying for them to think or for them to do, right? That's a dependent thinker. They're going to think dependent on what other people are saying or doing. And an independent thinker says, all right, I'll watch and I'll pay attention, but I'm going to keep my own counsel, right?
See,
And that's what I
that's
always tell people. If I say something and you don't like it, that's on you. That's not on me. I have the right to say that. I said, if I touch you, that's a different thing. Then I deserve an education. I said, but if I say something to you and you get mad, that just means you allowed what I said to control you, and you shouldn't be doing that to begin with. And vice versa. If you say something to me and I let it upset me, I didn't accept responsibility for my emotions. And that means I allowed what you said to control my thought process. And as my business mentor drilled in me, do not allow your emotions to rule your intellect. When you do that, you are reacting, and you never want to react. He said respond. When you're responding, your intellect is controlling your emotions.
See, that's quite huge. And I mean, it must be very hard to do this when you are wake up every day eating cardboard for breakfast. How do you not get beaten down by that? How do you still come with the energy that you're going to, you know, own that situation, own your own thoughts and your emotional responses to things?
Well, as my business mentor said, he said, it's an amazing thing about when you get to the bottom of the pool. He
Yeah.
said, only when you get down in the drain do you get to kick off and come flying out the top of the water, where most people just sort of hover in the middle of the water somewhere. And and because of that, they never have the momentum to come flying out of the water. You got to get to the bottom of the drain to get there. You got to get to the bottom of the pool, right? And as he said, remember, you never drown by falling in a pool. You drown by staying there. So, and there's a great difference there, right? I mean, that makes a lot of sense. So, to sort of talk a little bit about more on communities, because all of this, how to answer your question, how do you do that every day? Well, when you have the right group of people around you, it's a whole lot easier,
Yeah.
as opposed to doing that with stomping out fires at the same time, right? So I'm going to share a little bit about how we build those communities, how to give your listeners some things they can use that can help them build their own communities, right? So we have what we call in Givers University, we teach people to do that, right? And we call it a junto. We call a Givers Community a Givers Junto. And basically, the intention of a junto, or definition, is a group of people that get together for a common purpose. That's the definition. Group of people get together for a common purpose, right? Now, the term itself actually was like from the 1600s, Spanish word. Wasn't used too much until the 1700s, when a man by the name of Benjamin Franklin picked it up. And in 1727, Benjamin Franklin put together a group of 12 of his friends. He called this group the Mutual Improvement Club. Later on, he called it the Junto, and then they also called it the Leather Apron Club. Now, what's interesting is this group of a dozen people met every Friday for a couple hours. They talked about ethics, politics, morals, talked about all kinds of things. And in the United States, we have this thing called the Declaration of Independence. It can arguably said that the Declaration of Independence itself, the seeds of which can be found in the conversations that Ben Franklin had at his Leather Apron Club or his junto. So no one can tell me juntos can't have a huge impact, especially when a great group of people get together for the right reason. So we have three kinds of juntos that we help people create for themselves. And I'm going to define those real quickly and give a quick example. The first one is what's called a greater junto, a giver's greater junto. Any number of people, can be worldwide, people getting together for a common purpose, right? A good example of that might be Salvation Army would be a good example. Maybe the Lions Club might be a good example, right? They have chapters in different places, and they get together for a common purpose. That's a greater junto. The second is what's called an insider junto. An insider junto is 2 to 12 members, much more intimate, right? Much more confidential, if you will, more of a close-knit group. Good example of that would have been, the Ben Franklin Leather Apron Club. Good example, right? Then we have what's called the Givers Millionaire Junto. And these are 2 to 12 vetted millionaires who are getting together for a common purpose. Those are the three kinds: greater junto, insider, and millionaire junto. A good example of the millionaire junto was, first of all, the one I had with my business mentor. That was millionaire junto, right? It's two of us. Another good example was in 1915, Henry Ford formed a millionaire junto with himself, Thomas Edison, the inventor, Harvey Firestone from Firestone Tires, And John Burroughs, who was actually a writer and a poet, and interesting as what for a living, he was actually a federal bank examiner. So I can only guess he must have been the money guy. But anyway, and Henry Ford called this group the Four Vagabonds. That was the name he gave them, right? So he named his group, and that's an example of a millionaire junto, and all their businesses prospered as a direct result. So here's what's different about a giver's junto. All of the members agree up front to doing certain things. Now, I'm familiar with a book called Think and Grow Rich, and I suspect you probably are too.
Yep, Napoleon Hill. Yep.
Yeah, for sure. And Napoleon Hill talks about the mastermind. I've witnessed, maybe you have too, a number of masterminds that they come together, but then within a couple of months, they just sort of dissipate. And I've always been a little perplexed by that. And the perplexity with me causes curiosity, and then I want to find out, well, why is that happening? Looking for the solution, whatever that may be. And we realized it was the giver's junto because there were certain aspects that were not happening as Napoleon goes through his explanations of mastermind, which is masterful, for sure. But there's certain parts he doesn't get in at the very granular level of how do you decide on those 12 people, or what do you do? So we wanted to make it go the next step, if you will. So that's actually what we've done with these three different kinds of juntos. So I can share with you the steps of forming a junto. There are 7 steps.
Okay.
Easy to remember by virtue of an acronym that has 7 letters. The acronym word is discern, which incidentally is also what we teach, how to discern in relationships, right? So the first letter, D, means decide. Decide who you're going to have, right? Or who you're going to invite. So most people wouldn't know where to begin. The first question is, how do I decide who? That's where we really come in. Remember that checklist I mentioned of the 25 do's? We give it for free. We want people to have it because we know it's going to impact them, because our job at Givers University is to get that scale out of balance. That's our job, and that's our goal and commitment, right? So the 25 do's as an actual checklist helps people begin to discern, okay, this person here only does like 5 or 10 of them. I should look at them a little closer maybe. All right, this one here, and they're nailing all 25. I definitely want to send them an invite to become a part of my junto. So what that does is it helps them have an actual how-to checklist. Look for, observe these deeds. And then these are the people that you want to have around you. Because if they're doing these things, they're where they need to be. The only way they could be doing those things is that they're in the right place, and you want to have them as a part of your giver's junto. So D is discern. You have a question?
Yeah, I was going to say, this is like, it's funny because I've had other people on the podcast, entrepreneurs and people like that, who have, one sticks in my mind, Pip Jameson. She's started a kind of online networking platform for creatives, but she's an entrepreneur, and she meets regularly with other entrepreneurs, and they don't give business advice, but they give kind of moral support, if you like. So it's like a kind of encouragement, almost like a self-help group for entrepreneurs, people addicted to success. And it just resonates with me that these high achievers surround themselves with other high achievers who can help, kind of spark them to even go further. So this is great. So carry on anyway. So we've done D.
For sure. So D and I is the next letter, which means invite. You invite the 12 people, and we even teach people, this is what you say. This is how you invite them. This is what you want to accomplish, right? S is for seed. And in the seed part, whoever's forming the chapter or the junto shares with them, these are the 3 pillars, and this is the one intention. You need to agree to these up front. If you don't agree to these up front, no problem. That's okay. We'll part friends. Let's stay friends. This just won't be for you, right? So that's a critical part in the commitment, is from the onset, setting forth the expectations.
Yeah.
What's expected of each member of the group and why, and that it will be policed because it's important that every member continue to do that, right? And then what happens is the fear dissipates on, they're going to take advantage of me. Because when you have the junto formed right, following our instruction, what happens is you have, of 12 members, you as a person doing what we call the giver's contest intention. We actually name it. That's Sam's contest, right? That everyone, see who can help the other ones more than they're getting back.
Yeah.
Well, if each member is doing that, that means when each member does, they have 11 more doing it back at them. And that's the perfect scenario of what Napoleon Hill masterfully discusses, the spirit of harmony, right?
Yeah.
That can be very positive or destructive, right? So by setting forth the standard in advance and on the onset, it helps establish the spirit of harmony that's so critical in maintaining that continuity in the glue, and then the ongoing agenda, which we actually provide them with, so that there's structure to the events, right? Because this is about, as we go through the 3 pillars I'll touch on, as it's called the giver's junto, right?
Yep.
So the giver's junto is, the first pillar is our credo. Our credo is give to be great, that you can be great by giving, right? Second is our pledge, to help, and this every member pledges, to help every giver junto member lead a life of predictive, massive, and exceptional happiness, freedom, and greatness. They have to agree to that up front. Then the third is our labor of love. Every group should have a labor of love, something they're doing. We are launching ours this coming fall, a year from now, 2022, and it will be massive. We have an actual way, step by step, on how to end hunger one zip code at a time.
Wow, fantastic.
And that has quite annually, that's a carryover from my business mentor who lived on cardboard, right? It's a way for me to, you never know how something can impact someone, way down the road. He passed away early because of his diabetes, but I think our labor of love is an outstanding one. So they commit up front to those 3 pillars, and then what we call the 3 pillars and the one intention. The one intention is that they commit to the giver's contest intention. I'm going to help all of you earn more money than I'm possibly ever going to get back. And when all of them do that, it's this incredible spirit of dynamic that comes out of it that is inexplicable and much greater than they could ever do on their own, because, the sum of the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So the C now in discern is convene. They need to convene on a regular basis, whether that be weekly, every couple of weeks, a month, each month, whatever. There needs to be a regular, consistent convening. E is establish a name. Give their group an identity. The Leather Apron Club from Ben Franklin. The 4 Vagabonds, Henry Ford, right? Give it an identity, because the identity will help the continuity of the group as well. And then also after that is R is for rotate. Have a different chair. We provide the giver's juntos with an actual agenda to help not only with the commitments up front, but then ongoing. These are the questions to ask of everyone of the group at your next meeting. Here, and that creates the prosperity and the 3 pillars that we are after, providing with the agenda we're providing to them, and that each meeting a different person chairs. They rotate through the whole group, right?
Okay.
So that it's not up to one person in the group. They all are together equal there. And then the last N is for numbers. That someone can be a part of more than one junto. They should seed other juntos, and they could be a part of a millionaire junto and also an insider junto, and to begin to develop those even on a worldwide basis, because it's extraordinary what can happen when you have that kind of thing come together. So those are the 7 steps that spell out discern. Now, what we do to help everyone is we actually do a 2-minute clip every week that we send out, and it's actually on our YouTube channel. And that 2-minute clip is the next step in forming the junto. So we started about 6 weeks ago. So we've got 6, I guess you could say, episodes. And the first one talks about what's the difference between a giver and taker community. Right? And then and the little one and the most recent one is about the 3 pillars that I just spoke with about. So we're going to walk them through so that they will have a way that's absolutely free, absolutely available. Here's the granular steps by step to form your own giver's junto or your own group. Use the same things. We want it out there. We all benefit, because I've seen too many masterminds that came together with the right idea in mind, but didn't have the continuity, the commitment up front, and the ongoing structure that was so critical to keep it, glued together, if you will, and have those expectations from the beginning. It was just sort of, let's all get together because Napoleon Hill said, and Napoleon Hill's masterful. I got to tell you, masterful at what he explains. But we wanted to go that next mile for people, if you will, and provide that for them.
So you're kind of creating a structure, because there's nothing to stop someone going away, getting their cleverest and brightest friends to kind of get together and have a mastermind group, if you
We
like.
want them to.
But this is more about creating a formal structure that will help people commit to that and keep turning up, keep showing up, keep, trying to outdo the other masterminds in that group in terms of lifting each other up. It reminds me of a conversation I had a few episodes ago with a woman called Lindsay Hadley, and she does these big projects of great social good. But she gets huge multinationals involved, and everyone benefits, because she says it's based on the convener model. And she says, when everyone's putting in, it raises all ships together. Everyone starts to benefit when they're all giving.
Yes.
But it's a fantastic model, I guess. So what are the benefits of coming along with Givers University and going off and doing it yourself?
Real simple. We're going to give them the steps, so they'll never be at a point where, what do I do next?
Yeah.
And so we set forth the guidelines, we set forth the agenda, and all of it is within those 3 pillars and the one giver's intention. And we feel just having people having that mindset and going into it saying, all right, I'm going into this thing and I'm going to outgive everyone else in the group. And it's great to know that all of them are going to be doing the same thing. We all win, and exponentially as a direct result. And I'd love to be able to share with everyone, how they get started with it, because it's absolutely free. We're doing this free. We want it. We're building value in people's lives, and we're Givers University. We sort of have to. Yep. That's the way it is, right? We're going to do it no matter what. Well, there's 2 ways. One is someone just go to our website. It's giversuniversity.com, plural, right? And on every page you can sign up for our newsletter. It's absolutely free. We don't spam people. I hate that. I sign up for something and next, I'm getting 6 emails a day from them, and I unsubscribe. They're going to get an email right away that says, do you want to communicate with these people? Because we're not spammers. And they have to say yes. Yeah, I want to hear from them. Within an hour or 2 after, they're going to get their first download absolutely free. That's called The 6 Arrows That Takers Shoot at Givers. It's a great checklist. About 2 days later, they're going to get the 25 do's I mentioned, absolutely free. We want them to download it, print it off, put it in their pocket, and use it in discerning all, not some, all of your relationships. Because your life will, and we even teach people how to supplant. If they see someone being a little takerish, what do you do in that instance? Because now I learned this skill a little bit later than I would have loved to have learned it. But now I've got to. What do I do in that? It's a skill. We teach them what to do, right? So then once a week, they get one simple small newsletter from us. It's called the Giver's Toolbox. And every week, we give them a new relationship tool to put in their relationship toolbox that's going to help them with their life, with their relationships, and their discernment. It's every Thursday. That's it. Jam their email or nothing else or push anything else on them. Through the course of that, they find out who we are. We've got courses that are online and all those things. But we know all that's really secondary to where we're at. We know that we're just, at this point, we want to do something that's so great and to welcome people to be a part of something exciting that's bigger than themselves.
Yeah.
And to be there in the very, very beginning. They can also, to find out about the Givers Junto, when they go to our website, go to the hamburger in the upper right-hand corner, click on it, and they'll look for the tab that says Givers Junto. And there's 6 options if they want information on there to either be a chapter, form a chapter of any one of those 3 different kinds, or to be a member of any one of those 3, and we'll connect them to another Giver Junto. So, and they could just say, I want more information on this, have someone contact me, kind of thing. And that's it. We love to. We're so blessed to be able to share this, and I'm so blessed to have had the mentor that I did. And I have a responsibility, and it has to do with a vow. When I was 19, I asked Sam Robbins, Sam, will you teach me everything? I want to know it all. Don't hold back. All of it. Teach it all. He said, okay, I'll teach you, but I want one thing back. And I said, okay, what's that? He said, when the time is right, and you will know that time, I want you to teach as many people as possible everything I taught you. So at 19 years old, I made a vow. I made an oath to this man that today is Givers University.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And there's such a strong message there as well. I think, we're all competing all the time, but this is actually about almost gamifying, lifting each other up. And I think that's a brilliant and really worthy route to success, if you like. If you can find success and bring other people with you while you're doing it, I think that's a really powerful and a really valuable, worthy way to do it. So yeah, I'm going to be signing up myself.
I look forward to it.
Yeah,
and same with your listeners. It's all free. They've got nothing to lose, and what a great way to have their influence of their life. And if I may, I'd like to share the three phrases in closing that my business mentor talked me into trying over 4 decades ago, and since then I've said these phrases multiple times every day, and as fortunes ebbed and tide in and out of my life, businesses went up and down, as they normally do with everyone and everything. It does with everyone, right? These 3 phrases, I pray your listeners listen to your podcast not only multiple times, but write these phrases down and begin to say them to yourself, every single person, because it will impact you in ways you don't even realize and recognize till you look back with that perfect 2020 hindsight vision. And these are the 3 things, in closing, that my business mentor persuaded me to say that had such a huge impact on my life. And they are as follows. I will never give up. I will keep rising up. And I will always overcome. That's
great. Yeah, great mantras, I think, to kind of live by and to keep you going, no matter what the circumstances are. And I think that's really powerful. I've heard similar things from people who do massive feats of endurance, ultra runners, people like that have similar kind of mantras. So I think it's really powerful to have those. So I'm gonna put those in the show notes, and I'm going to repeat those in the introduction as well. So thank you for that. And of course, all the URLs. So it's giversuniversity.com.
Yes, sir.
That's the place to go to. And it's so powerful. I've just entered into a what do we call it? A kind of mentorship with a colleague of mine, and we're going to start holding each other to account and helping each other.
Excellent.
I think all of these kind of things can really, really help people. So I'm going to really dive into Givers University. So I really appreciate that, and thank you for giving your time as well today. I'm very, very grateful.
Thank you. And as we say at Givers University, don't just have a good day. Have your best day ever.
So there you go. That was the very exciting and interesting and inspiring E.A. Csolkovits. What a storyteller he is. But what a brilliant idea. Just getting together a group of people who all have one aim, and that is to lift each other up. I can't see why there is any reason not to give that a go. And you can find out more about his Givers University at www.giversuniversity.com. And next week I'll be speaking to Dr. Travis Fox. You might know him from the sequel to The Secret, and we'll be talking about how to feel your goals into reality. So don't miss out on that one, and don't forget to subscribe and rate and review, and wherever you get podcasts, just check us out and share the love. And you can also find more episodes at conversationsonliving.com. And until next week, when I'll be speaking to Dr. Travis Fox, have a lovely day.